So I got rid of my OnePlus. I threw it on eBay.
Yeah, it wasn't broken, was it? It was just the software just sucked, right?
Yeah, the software just sucks. I've reset it and it seemed to be working fine. I think I probably just had a bad installation or whatever, but I've got the Pixel now. And it sold in 45 minutes.
Yeah, I saw you tweet that. I think. Yeah, that's pretty insane. Must be a lot of demand for that phone.
Yeah, the stock in the UK is like really bad. You pretty much can't get it anywhere.
Really?
So before I listed it, I just checked eBay for whatever the lowest price was and put mine £10 less than that. So yeah, 45 minutes and now it's gone.
Wow. Yeah, you didn't have too much trouble getting yours though, did you? Like whenever you bought it in September or August or whenever it was.
Well, I bought mine off my friend who accidentally ordered two.
That's right.
So he'd had waited like a week for both of the two that he'd accidentally ordered.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would have been like 4 or 5 week wait, I think.
Oh, okay. Well, speaking of waits, I just got my USB-C Ethernet dongle. That was a good 8 to 10 weeks from Belkin. I ordered it at the same time I ordered my new Mac Pro, and I got so that was probably middle of November, and it just came earlier this week.
That's good. At least you can have Ethernet now.
It's ridiculous, though, that Apple doesn't make this device.
Yeah, I don't know why they don't.
I mean, it looks an awful lot like an official Apple one, because I own the old USB A to Ethernet dongle, and they're pretty close. I wouldn't be surprised if this one is made by Belkin too.
Yeah, it's just really strange that like they're selling the future of laptops with USB-C, and it clearly is the future, but they just don't sell all the dongles, and they're kind of relying on Belkin to make some of them.
Yeah, it works just fine. I mean, I haven't used it very long, but it seems fine. And the one thing that is a little bit of a disadvantage with having everything be USB-C is you can fill up the ports pretty fast, because right now I'm sitting here with the USB-C to USB-A dongle going into the microphone, and the USB-C to Ethernet going into that, and then the power cable going into another. So that's 3 out of the 4 ports right there.
Yeah, have you looked into any of these like not docks, but like these dongles that have got like 5 or 6 different ports on, like USB and SD card and stuff like that? Have you tried any of those? Because I was kind of investigating those the other day.
I
I'm
haven't
not buying a laptop yet, but
right. I haven't with this. I had one back in the day, maybe made by Griffin. I'm trying to remember if it was Griffin or somebody else, but I had one that went into, I want to say Thunderbolt, maybe, that was for our iMac, and it had Ethernet, and it had USB, FireWire, and a bunch of other stuff, right? And also a DisplayPort, I think. And it worked, but then it fried itself. It stopped working one day. I mean, it was expensive too. It was like $300 at the time.
yeah, that seems to be part of the problem at the moment. Is that they're definitely a little bit cheaper than they used to be, but they're still £150, something like that. But as I say, I'm going to wait a bit before I buy a new MacBook Pro anyway. But I was kind of just investigating what the dongle situation was. Kind of, what are we now, 3-4 months in?
Yeah, it'd probably be good just to let everything shake out. I like it a lot. I do notice that I tend to work with a lot of apps open, and so I can really grind the battery down fast. It's not a huge problem for me because I use my laptop at home most of the time, so I usually can plug in somewhere for a while. But if I'm on it for a long time, I can grind the battery down pretty quickly depending on what I'm working on.
Yeah, it's definitely been what other people have been saying as well.
Yeah, and I think it's particularly a problem if you do what I do, which is have a million Safari tabs open all the time.
Yeah, I think that's definitely what kills it, is when you've got all these different tabs open, and presumably you've got something for writing open and all this kind of stuff. So
right, because if I shut off Safari, but the problem is I need Safari open. But if I limit the tabs, it tends to do a lot better. But it's not unusual for me to have 50 tabs open.
Wow, no,
Yeah.
I can't cope with more than about 6.
Yeah, I've been
I
trying to
start getting a bit stressed about it.
Yeah, I'm trying to be better about that, but they just tend to multiply.
So the Nintendo Switch
Yeah,
was announced, what, two weeks ago now, I guess?
yeah, that's about right. I think it was maybe week ago this past Thursday, something like that. Because I actually stayed up till, what I think it was on at like 11 o'clock at night and watched the Nintendo Direct. And it was interesting because I've never really followed press release type stuff with Nintendo, and having watched so many keynotes of Apple's, it was a very different type of presentation.
Yeah, I watched a few clips from the presentation. I didn't stay up to watch it or anything. I wasn't particularly interested. But yeah, they're definitely very, very different from the way Apple does things.
Yeah, it was very goofy in a lot of ways. There was a lot lost in translation. I mean, that was definitely an issue because it was all in Japanese, obviously, and you would think that a company like Nintendo that was launching its comeback product that is supposed to that's a big deal would hire the best translators that are available, but they had this one guy who just completely lost his train of thought in the middle of part of it, and you could just see people talking on stage and there was nothing. and then he would try to get back kind of on track and translate what was being said, and he'd say a few words and then he'd pause, and it was just this one. They had a bunch of different translators. I don't know, maybe because they were switching between stages, or maybe they weren't even in the same location. I'm not even sure what was going on there, but this one guy he completely flubbed the whole thing up, and it was pretty painful to watch. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, like, obviously the presentation is kind of strange, but in terms of the actual console, like, are you pre-ordering one? Have you pre-ordered one?
I did order one. I was on the fence in advance, and I almost didn't. And the reason I almost didn't was because the software lineup seemed a little weak from the presentation. There's really only a couple of games coming out day one, but then I think Mario Kart is coming in April. And there's a couple on launch, which I think will be enough, because there's Zelda on launch, which, they saved that to the very end. And it got to the point where people are like, oh, I can't believe they're not talking about Zelda. It's not coming out. It's been delayed. And then eventually they reveal that Zelda's coming out on day one, too. So there'll be that one. And then the 1-2 Switch game, which is a little bit like Wii Sports. It's, it's a bunch of mini games that highlight a lot of the technology that's in the new console. So that'll be enough to kind of keep me occupied, I think, for the first bit. And then Mario Kart will come out, which should be fun because you'll be able to play online with that one. So I pre-ordered it. I was excited about the hardware. I think it's kind of neat that you can pull it out and take it with you. It's, from what I've read, it looks like they've done a pretty good job with, what the compromises that have to be made to allow this thing to both work as a handheld device and on a screen. It's not, a TV screen. It's not the kind of, it's by no means an Xbox or a PS4. It's the usual Nintendo, maybe it's close to, I don't know what it's comparable to, but it's definitely not, next generation hardware by any means.
No, definitely not. I think one of the biggest problems I've got with it is kind of what you've just said. Like, I get that it's never going to be kind of, on feature parity with, a PS4 or an Xbox One, but it's significantly more expensive than, the current generation of PlayStations and Xboxes, and I'm kind of going to wait it out and see. Well, presumably by around Christmas they're going to start doing actual bundles with maybe a game or two, or with the Pro Controller or something like that.
Yeah.
Because right now it gets pretty expensive. Like, it's in the UK, it's £280 plus another £60 for Zelda, pretty much, because that's your only option right now.
Right.
And then, of course, if you want the Pro Controller, because looking at the, the Joy-Con things attached to the little plastic thing,
yep,
I don't think that controller's really going to cut it for me, so I probably want the Pro Controller.
Mm-hmm.
So then that's bringing that price up to £400-ish.
Yep.
And it's maybe just a little bit much for me to justify buying one right now.
Yeah, I'm waiting on the Pro Controller. I mean, I think that the Pro Controller will be nice to have, kind of for the reason you said. I think that the Joy-Con controllers, if you use them as independent small controllers, will probably be too small and kind of a compromised version of a controller, although I think that those will probably be used more for when you're doing games on the go, when you take it somewhere and play with someone else in the kickstand mode, that sort of thing. Not like the way you would use it normally. There is a lot of technology built into the controllers that's kind of cool. There's haptic feedback. There's all sorts of gyroscope stuff going on in there. So I think that the controllers are very interesting. And when they're locked into, I don't even know what they call that thing, where you put the two little pieces into the bigger plastic piece.
Sure, yeah.
And then it looks like more like a regular controller. That's I think how most people and most games will use the controllers, I would think, from the beginning. But yeah, I thought it was kind of cool. I agree with you that it's a little pricey at the beginning. I think that I do think by the holidays maybe that'll come down a little bit, even if it's not that the price drops as much as you'll get more for your money with bundles and that sort of thing. I'm going to hold off on the Pro Controller. One thing that I think is kind of cool is you can buy the dock separately for, I think it's about $80 or $90 US. And the nice thing about that is, ours will be normally installed down in the basement of our house. But if I have another dock, I can just plug it in upstairs or somewhere else, or take it along somewhere and use it that way as well, without having to dismantle, the setup we have for where it will normally live in the house.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting proposal, and there's been some people saying, "Oh, a base is $90," but I mean, you don't have to buy it. It's it's entirely optional. I do think there's a couple of unanswered questions that I can't quite work out. I mean, the first one is about the Joy-Con kind of holder that converts it to a controller. From what I was reading, you can't charge that charge the Joy-Con controllers while playing. You have to buy a separate charging holder that is basically the same, but you can actually charge that. So that's kind of a little bit concerning because, let's be honest, I don't know how long they're going to last, but I can't imagine if I'm sat there for 4 or 5 hours playing Zelda, they're going to last the whole time necessarily.
Right.
There was something interesting with the Pro Controller as well. They do a wired Pro Controller for about half the price. And I'll be honest, I'm not that bothered about wireless controllers because I don't sit that far away from my TV anyway.
Right.
So that could definitely be an option for me to just buy the wired version instead and save a little bit of money.
Right. Yeah, I think it would have been nice if they'd thrown in the 1-2 Switch title as well, just because it's designed to show off the technology, and that's what they did with Wii Sports, and that in large measure is what got the Wii to take off.
Yeah, I kind of can't with 1-2 Switch. I can't work out. I feel like the only reason that's going to sell is because it's only one of 4 or 5 launch titles.
Well, that's exactly why I bought it, because it's the only option I've got.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I agree with you. I think it doesn't feel like a full game that you should be paying full price for. It really should be included with the console.
I think it's about $10 cheaper.
Right. Okay. So it's a little bit cheaper, but it's still an expensive game.
Right.
Even if you could they did some bundles with 1-2 Switch where you maybe get the game for say $10 or $20 on top of the console price. But yeah, I think 1-2 Switch, as much as it looks cool, I very much doubt I'm ever going to buy that.
Right. Yeah, I pre-ordered a bunch of stuff mainly because I figure I can always cancel these as the dates come up. But right now, looking through Amazon, it looks like Super Bomberman is coming out on March 3rd, which looks like an interesting game. Then there's Zelda and 1-2 Switch, with Super Mario Kart coming at the end of April, very close to the very end of April. And then the other ones don't have official dates yet, other than what they said on stage. Splatoon's coming, something called ARMS, which looks interesting. It's a boxing game.
Sure.
But where you have
I did see that one.
Did you see that one?
Yeah, I did see the video for that.
Yeah, so that looks pretty good. I don't know. I'm excited about it. I'm actually a little surprised that you're not ordering one or aren't interested in it. I thought you do have a Wii U, right? And a Wii?
No, I have a Wii. I don't have a Wii U.
Oh, okay.
And the Switch has actually, because I have been eyeing up the Wii U for a while. Just keeping an eye on the price until it comes down, which it's not going to do. But the two games that I wanted to play on the Wii U, which was Zelda, whichever one they released for the Wii U, the remake,
Yeah.
plus Mario Kart, and presumably Breath of the Wild.
Mm-hmm.
But now that all of those, well, I mean, the Zelda remake's not, but like Breath of the Wild and Mario Kart are coming out for the Switch, I'm kind of, I'm not even bothering with the Wii U now.
Right. Yeah, that's a pretty typical Nintendo thing to do too, because they did that when the Wii U came out. The I forget which Zelda title it was, but a Zelda title came out on both Wii U and Wii.
Yeah, it's kind of strange, and I think I would be concerned for the people that all, or if I was Nintendo, I'd be concerned the people that already own a Wii U. Two of the big titles they're talking about, they can already get.
Right.
I mean, I know Mario Kart has got some extras on the Switch, but it's still basically the same game. So that might hurt their sales somewhat, but, I think in general the Switch is a pretty compelling console, but I've got quite a big backlog of games to play on the PS4 and Xbox One, so I'm not in a huge rush to run out and get one.
Yeah. No, I get that. I have found that this kind of game system is probably better for me anyway, because I just don't spend a lot of time playing games, and so things like this, which are a little less complex and more casual and don't require a big investment of time to have fun, are probably better suited to me anyway, which is why I got one.
Oh yeah, I as I say, I can completely. I'm very, very interested in it. I feel like I want the price to be a little bit less. For me, I just don't want to pay quite as much as they're asking for right now.
Yeah, no, it's definitely an investment. It's coming. It's one thing, pleasant surprise. It's coming March 3rd, so that's really only I don't know what 6 or so weeks away. So that's pretty quick. It seems to have sold out most places in the U.S., although I don't think that's really particularly indicative of anything. I mean, if you look at the NES Classic, they just didn't make enough of those. It may be the same.
Yeah.
May be the same situation here. I still go looking for an NES Classic every now and then, and I can't find it.
No, I've looked a few times in various different retailers in the UK. They've never got any stock.
Yeah, I don't know. It's very strange. It's like printing money. If they could just make 3 or 4 times as many, I think they'd sell a ton of them because they're not expensive. It's something like $60, I think, here.
Yeah, I think it's like £50 here or something.
Right.
So yeah, it's not a lot of money, and yeah, you're absolutely right. If they were actually available, I mean, I'd probably give them £50 for one.
Did you see that people are hacking them now and putting extra games on?
Yeah, I did see that.
I guess it's easier to do on Windows than on a Mac to do the actual hack, whatever you have to do that.
Yeah, it certainly seems like it. I mean, I do have a Raspberry Pi with a couple of like USB fake NES controllers, so I can kind of do a lot of that anyway. But yeah, it's it's kind of interesting that you can do it with the actual official Nintendo box. Of course, it's only if you can actually get your hands on one.
Yeah. No, what was that? What's that emulator that they have that works on the Apple TV? What's that called again?
Provenance.
Yes. We installed that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really nice. I mean, it's pretty much the only use I've had out of the controller I bought for the Apple TV.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It's I haven't used it a lot, but it's kind of interesting to play. I've been testing an upcoming emulator for iOS called Delta that's coming out at some point, and it's they initially issued it through test flight through some. I think some deceptive means with Apple, and got found out and got it yanked from test flight. So they're looking for other ways to distribute their beta now. But it's really well done. It's some college kids at University of Southern California, I think.
Cool.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, but it's at the point now where it's still early days, and as nice as it is to have an emulator on iOS, using a touchscreen for those kind of games just isn't that great.
No, definitely not.
The other game that I got, Rob, that I want to tell you about is Poochie and Yoshi's Woolly World. That's for the 3DS. And I just saw the trailer. I ran into it the other day because, and this is probably, this is of course why these brands have YouTube channels, is that if you subscribe to them, they can basically pitch products to you constantly, which is what which this one came across my feed, and I was like, oh, this looks like a lot of fun. And it's just one of those Yoshi and his sidekick Poochie, who's a little dog, are yarn characters, and it's a platformer based on those characters, and it supports amiibo and things like that. And I don't know, it looks kind of fun, so I had to order one of those too.
And when's that? That's coming out, what, the next few weeks or something?
Yeah, February 3rd, I think, at least in the U.S. So it looked pretty cool.
Yeah, it looks good. I mean, I hadn't seen it until you mentioned it just before we started recording. I mean, it looks fun, and I kind of agree with you. Like it looks like an iOS kind of Android mobile game, and I think you've kind of said this before. Like that's where you tend to invest more time rather than kind of big AAA titles, spending 20 hours playing them or whatever.
Right. Well, and that's exactly the reason I ended up following the Nintendo channel too, is because now that they're doing some iOS games, I've been keeping track of where those are going for Mac Stories. And like last week, there was an announcement about Fire Emblem coming out on iOS, and it was pretty funny because they did one of these Nintendo Directs, which is a short live video highlighting games, and they have Fire Emblem coming out on 3DS and Switch and on iOS. So there's a bunch of different titles coming out. But when they got to the mobile version, they showed it off, and at the end, it said, and I'm not going to remember the exact date. It said coming on whatever date it is, and then it said and for Android and coming soon on iOS, which was a real big surprise because up until now, most of Nintendo's most of the press they've been issuing on doing mobile games has been related to iOS, even though they are doing Android as well. And within 2 hours, there was an official tweet issued by Nintendo clarifying that they're coming out on the same day on iOS. Somebody made a call from Cupertino, I think.
Sure.
It's one of those.
Yeah, they. I don't know if you saw, but Mario Run has finally got a date for Android.
I saw that.
I think it's like 3rd of March. Maybe I think it might be the Switch release day.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, they've had a page up for a while. I think you might remember I tweeted probably over Christmas in December sometime, the like pre-register page, but yeah, it finally actually has a date for release.
Yeah, it's always interesting to me, kind of the what's not said in a lot of these press releases, because right after the video, Nintendo put out a press release, and iOS wasn't mentioned in the press release even once. They didn't mention Android either, I don't think. But I don't know. It was one of those things, little criminology there, trying to figure out exactly what was going on. It did make me wonder whether the experience on iOS with Super Mario Run has been so bad that maybe Nintendo was backing away, but I don't think that's probably the case.
That seems unlikely. I'm sure they're making plenty of money on iOS.
Well, this week they dropped out of the top 50 for the first time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, of grossing, and it's not. I think it's grossing, and it's not really been that long since it came out. And they haven't. I haven't looked recently, but for the longest time, they had an average star rating of about 1.5 stars because people are so unhappy with having to pay.
Yeah.
So it's not been without its issues, at least from making customers happy. So I don't know. We'll have to see. I think they could have done a lot better with that launch than they did. But part of it is just the way the App Store works, though, too.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm kind of interested to try it because I'd already got rid of my iPhone before it came out on iOS, so I haven't actually played it yet.
Right.
And I don't have an iPad that I want to use. Like the iPad we have is way too slow. It's like an original Mini, maybe.
Right.
So I'm just going to wait till it comes out on Android and give it a try.
Yeah, it's a good game, and if you actually, what I think when people first use it, they don't realize is that it's a very Nintendo game, in that if you clear the special coins in a level, it basically makes the level like a new level because it changes the landscape, and you have to go then for go from the purple coins to the black coins, and so there's like levels within levels basically, and there's all sorts of hidden things, and very much Super Mario style. That I think when people first looked at it and were trying to do their real quick hot takes about it, thought, oh, this is not a very deep game. It's like, well, you haven't really tried to play the game properly, you know.
Yeah.
But
So, shall we jump into our last kind of little small topic?
yeah, we were going to talk a little bit about Twitter and how we use it. And I guess the reason I was thinking about this yesterday, Rob, when we were texting back and forth about it, is that I use Twitter basically to keep in touch with friends and for getting tech information of various kinds. And yesterday's Twitter was very much a political Twitter, which I have no problem with that. It's just not the Twitter that I'm interested in. And so I did set up some mute filters and very quickly realized that Twitter dried up for me. So I just walked away from it. And yeah, man, it is what it is, and I'm sure it'll be back to mostly tech stuff by Monday. But it got me thinking a little bit about what is it about Twitter? What do I go to Twitter for? How do I use it? And that sort of thing. How about you? What do you kind of use it for?
Yeah, so there's a few different things. I mean, kind of like you said, like chatting with friends. Me and you chat on there, and you make jokes about plastic bags to me whenever you can, and cat food.
I need to set up a reminder to do that again because it's been a little while.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's like chatting with friends, and news is a fairly obvious one. I follow not too many. I follow a couple of tech places. I follow like Daring Fireball and Mac Stories, and then I follow if there's like a Kickstarter or something, but I'm not that invested in the Kickstarter, I'll follow the company so I can wait and see when it's actually released and I can just buy it then.
Right.
So in some ways it's like, kind of like how I was using RSS when I used to use RSS a few years ago. Because the other problem is I hate email, so I'm not signing up for people's newsletters. So I tend to follow them on Twitter so that I can just see it there.
Yeah.
And then, I follow a lot of other developers, developers like me who I know or whatever, but also developers at, Facebook who are building stuff like React and Redux and things like that, just to kind of keep up to date with what's going on there as well.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's funny you mentioned like newsletters and RSS. I have kind of gone back to both of those things, but I've implemented things to make those work better for me. The problem I've always had with newsletters is that it's very easy for them to start clogging up your inbox if you don't read them right away. So I've been using SaneBox with my email, which will take those and drop them all into a folder. And then when I have time to read them, I can go there and do it without it all being dumped into my inbox. So that's worked out pretty well for me so far. SaneBox has probably done more to clean up my inbox than anything I've tried in the past. And I like it because it's server side, and that way I can use whatever email client I want on whatever platform and don't have to rely necessarily on just the features of a particular email client. RSS, I've been actually doing, I've started to resubscribe to those huge fire hoses from big media companies like The Verge and Engadget and things like that. But I've been using InnoReader to create filters that will pluck just the topics out of those feeds that I'm interested in, which then creates its own feed, which I can feed into yet another RSS reader. So it's a little Rube Goldberg, but it works. So I have feeds feeding a feed of basically Apple News. So that's just how I keep up on what's going on kind of day to day when I'm writing news stories for Mac Stories. I don't like to have a ton of news in my Twitter feed. I do have a few big news sites that I follow just to kind of see the headlines and what's going on in the world, and a few tech-related sites, blogs, and things that I get information from. But for the most part, it's people. For instance, if you follow, since I do a weekly game review, following game developers is a great way to get recommendations on games because they're usually tweeting about not just their own games, but games that they've played. They know games. So when they say this is a really cool game, it's worth checking out.
Yeah, there's as you say, it's just a great way to kind of get recommendations, whether it's games or, me following developers and somebody go, oh, check out this tool or, whatever. One of the other kind of I guess, secret ways I use Twitter is I have a Twitter account that's private that only I follow. And I've got various different things feeding into that. Like it shows me the weather in the morning. I've got a couple of RSS feeds that go into there, and it just auto tweets those for me. Just because I don't really want a full blown RSS kind of workflow or whatever. I don't want to follow too many.
Right.
So I just kind of feed a couple of RSS feeds into this private Twitter account, which I follow, and I can kind of dump stuff there that I want to look at as well.
Yeah, that's a good idea. How many? Here's a question for you. How many Twitter accounts do you have that you are, I guess, managing?
Let me open Tweetbot right now, and I will tell you. 1, 2, 3. So four accounts total that I'm kind of using regularly.
Yeah, I guess I have currently 6 of my own, and then I've got 3 Mac Stories ones here. So 9 total.
Wow.
But I don't, well, no, it's 10 actually. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I have 7 of my own and 3 Mac Stories ones here. But like the Mac Stories ones, I don't use a lot. I mean, I have them, they're there for if I need them to use them, but I do not take the lead on those. So I've got 3 here for products, iOS products that Owen and I have built. I've got one joke one, which you might recall, and one for an upcoming project that's just an egg right now, and then mine and the Umbrella Scribner one, which is just the whole company thing.
Sure.
So
yeah, there's definitely a few others that I have that I don't have in Tweetbot, because I searched for my username the other day, and I don't know why I set this account up, but there's a username iMac and then my username, so it's at iMac RM Lewis UK, and I have no idea what I set it up for. I don't know what the email address is. I don't know what the password is, but I obviously have a few more accounts that I'm not actually using right now.
You don't even have an iMac, do you?
Yeah, I have an iMac.
Oh, okay.
The iMac is in the Lego room.
Oh, all right. You don't use that to record, though, right?
No. This iMac, I had to replace the hard drive myself.
Oh, right. I remember that.
And so the hard drives that used to come with them, and I don't know if it's still the case, are proprietary to Apple, and they have a temperature gauge on them. So if you put a third-party hard drive in, you have to run third-party software to keep the fans running properly.
Oh, wow.
No, this iMac is... I mean, if it died, if I went up there now, turned it on, and it was broken, I'd probably just put it in the bin.
Sure.
It's kind of on its last legs, but, it works for me up there rather than having to take my laptop up there all the time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and as many as I have here, I really only use regularly my own personal one. The other ones are pretty limited.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of like you. It's mostly just my account, and I tweet fairly regularly from the Devs Do Design account as well.
Yep.
Although that's not always me, because all 4 of us have access to that account. So you can never quite tell who's been tweeting from it.
Yeah, which is always a little weird. That's why I try to keep my fingers out of the Mac Stories ones for the most part, just because I figure it's better if one person does the majority of tweeting from an account. Yeah,
definitely. And then, I mean, at work we have, Twitter accounts for, our company and, a couple of our products.
Right.
I think I have access to those. Like, I have the passwords, but, I generally don't go on there unless I absolutely need to.
Yeah. So I guess the other thing I would mention is just how I deal with the volume of Twitter. And I used to be more of a completionist than I am now. I've kind of let that go because it's just too much. Like overnight Twitter, I follow an awful lot of people in Europe, so usually I wake up to, I'd say, between 150 and 250 tweets, depending on when I go to bed. And I just kind of scroll through that very quickly. Just looking for, mostly at that point of the day, early in the morning, mostly just looking for news to cover, and look and see what you're up to. And then I use mutes a lot. I mean, just because I'm trying to limit what I'm like I said, I think I'm there for a particular reason, and it's mostly tech related. And so if Twitter takes a hard left into some sort of tangent, regardless of whether it's politics that I either agree with or disagree with, or anything, or it's cats for that matter, I liberally mute just to, even if it's only temporarily, so that both keywords and people sometimes, in order to keep the volume down and the topics to what I'm there to read.
Yeah, there's definitely a few. Like you, I will. If there's something big happening where there's a hashtag that people are using and I'm just not interested in it for whatever reason, I will mute it.
Right.
A really good example of this is Christina Warren tweets about The Bachelor every week.
Yes, unfortunately,
she loves that show.
Right, and she uses a hashtag, which I appreciate because I can mute it.
Yeah, because she's very responsible and always uses a hashtag. So that's a good example of something that I will mute because there's no scenario in which I'm going to care about that.
Right, but you don't want to unfollow Christina or mute Christina entirely because she's got a lot of interesting things to say. So I'm the same way. I don't care about The Bachelor, but I do care about hearing what she has to say.
Exactly. Responsible tweeting, people. Use your hashtags. And there's a few of these like novelty accounts that, the kind of accounts where it pretends to be a celebrity and makes jokes as if they're that celebrity. There's I don't know, Tom Hanks ones and stuff like that. I'll generally mute those because I'm just not particularly amused by them.
Right.
I'm happy to see actual celebrities, I guess, retweeted or whatever, but when it's like a parody account, I really don't care. So I generally kind of mute them if I see them more than 2 or 3 times.
Right. I used to follow some parody accounts like the Not Johnny Ive one and things like that, and they're funny, but a lot of times they're just noise. So I've unfollowed most of the parody accounts that I used to follow.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it really depends on the parody account. Like I think Not Johnny Ive is funny for the most part. But a lot of these like kind of general like A-list celebrities, like actors and things, these accounts kind of present themselves as if they are that actual person. Mm-hmm. And they have millions of followers, and all it says at the end of their bio is parody.
Right.
Like it's kind of frustrating because I don't know whether people are retweeting it because they think it's the celebrity or whatever. But yeah, I generally kind of mute those as well.
Yep. Yeah, I guess that's about it for me in Twitter. I mean, I don't know. It's always evolving. It's one of those things that I'm very careful about the number of people I follow, mainly because I just don't want to deal with any more volume than I've already got. And Twitter is hard to, it fills both such a personal and kind of business role for me that it's very hard to know if I'm there if I'm there procrastinating or if I'm there doing something productive. If you know what I mean. So
yeah, because I use it. I pretty much have it open all day at work.
Right.
And I'll jump back in and out if somebody says something, or when I'm taking a break or whatever. I'll read it. And a bit like you, it's kind of weird because on the one hand there is personal stuff going on there, just me and you chatting. That's not really helping me do my job.
I try, but I'm not much of a web developer.
But at the same time, I'm following, GitHub for changes there, and developers tweeting about libraries and packages and frameworks and this kind of stuff. So that is useful because I'm not sure where else I would get that information otherwise.
Yeah, what you're telling me is you're there for the packages.
I'm there for the packages. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. It's kind of a similar situation for me. So as a result, what I try to do is I try to stay out of Twitter and just jump in and get caught up for chunks of time, kind of in between things that I'm working on.
Yeah, that's I feel like that's kind of how I treat it as well. And it sounds like we've both got about the same kind of volume, because when I get up in the morning, I normally have between 150 and 200 tweets as well.
Yeah.
But of course, mine is all the evening Americans.
Yeah. So, well, for you, it's all the Californians, I'm sure, that there's no way you can possibly be up as late as they are. And then the other is always the Australians, too, right?
Yeah, as well. But, cool. Well, should we wrap it up for this week?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. Okay, show notes will be ruminatepodcast.com/37. I am on Twitter at RMLewisUK. And John, where can people find you?
At John Voorhees.
Perfect. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks.
Okay, see you later, Rob.